Good morning, good morning, good morning, my friends. I hope you are doing fantastic today. Alrighty, so let's get right into it, shall we? I said gates. Today is the day of gates. What are gates? Gates are the foundation on top of which you bring or produce pathways between this plane and others. So, getting into the reality tunnels, right, so to speak. When we have an idea, thought is the means by which any idea connects across dimensional spaces. So it allows us to use planetary energies, celestial energies, astrological energies, in order to create a space where we are not, where things are not. So we can project our consciousness, or we can bring other consciousness to us in a controlled kind of way. So I did a bunch of experiments on different types of surfaces to figure out which works best under which conditions. So polished stones resonate with our energies. They link us to the earth, and as such they function as a guide that can connect us to the seeds of other places where there are like-to-like minerals. So if there's those mineral combinations on other planets, we can temporarily project our consciousness into those planets across the galaxy, so that we can see what's on those spaces, the orders of spirits, the orders of life that are intangible to us, but are still stable in those environments under those conditions. It's like if you use a diamond and it's raining diamonds on, what was it, Jupiter, I believe, you know, the really, really big ones. You can technically project your mind into those spaces. Good morning, Dan. So I also use fossils as a conduit. Fossils are fantastic because it was life that became so old that it turned into a stone. So, like, ammonite is really, really good. I have a couple that are 120 million years old, and it was split right down the middle, and it spirals in one direction, and the other spirals in the other, so I use those, one in each hand, as an energy conduit, right? And then if I'm going to be projecting into the life of 120 million years ago, then I would project through the shell into the consciousness of that ammonite, because I'm using its physical body, even though its physical body is different. What's up, Lise? How's it going? So, shells. When you're using shells for connecting with spirits and things like that. So, those are the energies that can pull the places that humans can't travel through, right? So, like, again, I'm using the ammonite shell. It is a thing that used to be alive. Or, like, you hear the sound of the ocean when you've got the shell up next to your ear, right? Well, it's a connection to something that was. So by creating a space where that thing was, then you can connect to the type of life that lives within the oceans or lives within those environments back when it was something where it's not. Like if you go and you find shells in the desert, well, it was desert now, but it was at the bottom of the ocean ages ago, right? So the conditions of life are different. Now, the Greeks used to think that you could do different types of dreams based on what type of gateway you used. Horns and ivory are a type of... You would see true dreams if you went through the gate of ivory, whereas you would see false dreams if you went through the gate of bone. So the ivory gates would be the animal conditions. So if you're going to be traveling through different... Exactly, Elise. So if you're going to be traveling and riding on the way of spirits of animals, then you would be using a horn or bone or fur or hide of that animal to essentially ride the spirit into the other world. So that, like I use rabbits to pull spirits here, you can use them from here to go there as well. So that's a really good way to do it. I use alabaster to draw spirits also. So like you can get the handmade alabaster bowls. This is like Egyptian magic to draw spirits out. Wooden bowls you can use for the life of the trees or the construct of the world where those trees were. But you can also use it as a means of offering to the spirit of nature. You can use it as a way to connect you to the life of the tree that was, but all of the family of the forests and things like that that are ancestor forests. Silver mirror is a good one. So before they made the metal back mirrors now, they used to coat it in the back of it with silver, really thin piece of silver. And when you do that, silver has the means to store energy. So you can essentially roll the silver molecule with your psychic consciousness, with your consciousness, and it can store up energy and become a battery, allowing you to use it as a tool of foresight, so you can see what is the thing you want, right? Like, I've had some really crazy experiences when I used silver as a means to do scrying techniques, remote viewing, that sort of thing. The black mirror can be a couple of different things. You can use it as a flat plate, or you can use it as a convex or concave mirror to either go into or pull things out of or meet spaces on. They can be used to divide the space, like a little mini black hole, like those little Acme black holes that you see in the cartoons where they throw it on the wall and they can stick their hand through it. Basically, they function a lot like that. So when you're doing psychic work and you're trying to balance out that psychic connection between this world and the other ones, when you're interacting with spirits, you can conjure them into the black mirror, or you can work with them in that space, and it works around basically the same order of creation, where in the formation of the Kabbalah, you have Geburah, which is the division of God from all other things, so that way there could be a universe where God was not, so it could actually experience and express itself in the myriad of forms without it turning into what is the klipoth, the shells, which the divine has not been divided from, which degenerated into just the raw states of God and all the different forms of it. So it becomes very unstable. So you use it to divide yourself from the work, and you divide your work from this world. So when you're doing work in this space on top of the black mirror, then you're able to bring it into this world once your spell is assembled, once the spirit is present, once the energies are right, all of those things, so that the conditions match up to what they need to. The brass mirror is a really good one. So this goes back to the Greeks. They used to use brass as a means to connect to the spirit world and to see the other spirits in those things. So you can use it in solar energies, spirit energies of the solar forces that you're working with, in the same kind of capacity as silver, just not quite so good. But with brass and bronze and those kinds of compound metals, you're able to work with different things in their combinations. So while it's not pure gold, pure silver, the brass mirror has the unique property of producing compound effects. Now, there is this really awesome mirror called the Aranmula Kanadi. Those are supposed to show the true face of anybody who looks into them. It's made by a very specific tribe in a very specific way. Like, it is family-made mirrors. Like, that's the entire thing that this one town does in, I believe it's Pakistan, right on the border of India. So those are absolutely phenomenal. Bowls of water you can use as gateways. So you can river water, ocean water, rainwater, all of those things where you can project your consciousness into those intermediaries, and you can meet with the sylph. So you can meet with the elementals, or you can meet with the people that have died by water or been tortured by water, or you can purify things by water, or you can create access to the underworlds through that water that you're working with. So when you're working with things like grave dirt, that can also be a gateway, right? A lot of my work has to do with creating a pathway from this world into other ones using spirit paths, so that using the dirt from where people died, or that holds the souls of the dead, it acts as a means to lubricate the transition between regular dirt and the other world, so that you can pull spirits from it, or you can put spirits to it, so that way they can go back to peace and they can go back to rest, or they can be purified and sent on to their higher states. Now, crystal bowls, so like the leaded glass crystal ones, or like you can get fluorite or onyx and things like that, you can also use. And then those would resonate in their stone capacity and the principles of the stones. Like fluorite's great for dream work, but a little bowl of water with that, and you can connect to the Fey planes. So the phantasmagoria of what becomes possible when you start connecting to those energies. You can also use crystal spheres, right? I've talked about that in some other videos before. Like, depending on what type of crystal it is, if it's fused crystal, it's not going to have the same resonance as a natural native crystal, but even then you've got a crystal that's been cut out of a crystal, out of a point, right? Like, they don't naturally come in the ball shape. They have to be cut and polished and made into those ball shapes. So it allows for basically creating a 360-degree pinhole in the world instead of just having a flat surface through which to connect to those energies. So if you take a crystal that's big enough and you slice it down, then it acts in a different capacity than if you have a crystal that you spin on a lathe and you turn into one of those crystal balls, right? Animal bones, again, you're using bones, you're using things that connect you to that animal so that you can ride the spirit of that animal into the other world, right? I use human bone in my work, so I'm connecting to the human dead, not just animal dead. So it's all the people that have passed, so that way, you know, you can connect with them, or you can help them in their ancestral journey. You can get into different aspects of working with the spirits. So that way what you can do is purify the ancestral lineage, or you can purify, or you can work with ancestors that are not your own, right? And so then you can make, going from the bones, you can go into smoke. So that way, by using different types of incense, you can create temporary gates. Whereas if you've got like ribs, you can make the circle and you can constantly go back and use that. Whereas the smoke, it's a temporary body out of which the ingredients duplicate the type of thing that the forest wants. So in this case, like I said, you're giving body to things. So when you're doing summoning spells of like the goetic spirits or anything that's got a name to it, the name of the spirit is actually a list of ingredients that you use and put in that right order. So that way what you do is conjure up by the name of the spirit and the ingredients of it in its form. So you're giving it a body, you're replicating its effect, you're able to pass your consciousness into the meaning of the vibration of the smoke as it's shifting forms. So it's not something that's a static gate. It's something that has a definite opening and a closing based on what it is you're working with. Blood also works. So that you usually do if you're in a tradition where you're doing sacrificial magic, and there are traditions that do that, and they have been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's their thing. If you're not part of it, don't do it. But generally, the energy stops flowing once the blood stops flowing. All right? You can collect it, you can get a pool of it, and you can scry on it, you can add herbs to it, you can create a spirit vessel for it, so that way you have basically a means through which that life of the spirit passes from this plane into another one, and it is the vice versa. That energy then can draw out the spirits that you're feeding. You can use sensations. So again, in the same way that once it stops, you stop having an open connection to it, but you can use pain. So if you're doing like self-flagellation or having somebody else whip you, essentially, then you, while you're in that moment, while you're in that state, that acts as a means to separate yourself and your consciousness from this state and enter into another one, which allows you that temporary projection into another place. You can use a cauldron. Cauldrons are really fun because of the fact that you use them for all sorts of different things in either witchcraft or ceremonial use. It used to be that you were using them to feed your family. It used to be the gathering pot around which all food was produced. So to the old spirits, that's what they come for. They come to gather around having that community. So you're using it as a thing of the community. You're bringing the old family together, as it were, right? But in certain traditions, it also represents other things, like it accesses the well. You put water in it, you can use it to scry with. You can put herbs in it, you can put dirts in it. It can act as a mini version of the world itself, and you can apply it in different ways. A chalice is the ritual cup that sits on the altar. It functions a lot similar to the cauldron, only it's like for mass, where you would do it for blessings. You would do it for an offering cup. You would do it for things that would bring other things to you that are looking to receive the blessings from the cup, right? To give that elevation, to give that purification, so that what you are bringing to you when you use a cup as a gate is something entirely different than what you would use a cauldron for, versus an alabaster offering bowl, versus a bowl made out of animal horn, versus a bowl made out of wood. All of them function differently in their outcome for what they bring about. Pictures. paintings, art, those function as gateways because you're connecting to the artist, but also to the plane that the artist was seeing in that moment. So if you set up a crystal grid and you've got a piece of art that you're working with, you can project yourself into that piece of art, or you can pull a state of being out of that piece of art, and then you can replicate what that energy was in a small form, in miniature, right? Like you might not want to channel Van Gogh's crazy part when he cuts off his ear, but you can channel the same kind of thing with like the different ways that he saw the world, right? Like you can get that phantasmagoria, that psychic connection going, so that what you're connecting to produces those type of resonances within your spell work. So that way when you're trying to do ritual of communion, or you're trying to do ritual offering, or you're using art to separate yourself from a space, you can do that. Excuse me. And then you can use books. I love books for spells, right? When you connect to a book, you're able to connect to the author of the book. And then by doing that, you can connect to the meaning of the spirit that overrides it. So it's not just about the words that are written on the page. It's about what the spirit that inspired the thing caused in the individual who wrote the thing. So I was able to, the spirit I was, right, or I was, for Enochian magic. The guy that did the new double version of the hardback versions of John Dee's notebooks, he was originally studying the notes from the 1600s. Like, he had access to all of that. Well, I connected psychically to those because he had it in the paperwork, and therefore was able to interact with that spirit for a period of time. Really crazy shit when you do stuff like that. Dreams. So when you are dreaming, if you are sitting with somebody who's having a psychic dream or a shamanic dream, then you can essentially use them as a medium proxy. So as they dream, you can use that as a gateway to travel into their world, into the worlds that they see when they dream. So that by their dreams, you can then work with the spirits, or you can then work with the states of them in their dreaming state, so that way you can come to resolution with the different things you're trying to resolve, right? You can do that to the forests, you can do that to the deserts, you can do this to the hills, the trees, the mountains. Everything can act as a pathway from one planet to another, or one world into another, if you are connecting with the stones and the spirit of the, like in Japan, they're really popular, like Mount Fuji. It's, you channel Mount Fuji when you're doing Reiki work, right? You're channeling the gate of Mount Fuji, the spirit of peace and healing. Well, you can do this with any hill that's been around long enough that is a sacred, reverent thing, right? You can do this with fields, especially if you're doing this with battlefields, like the battlefield at Gettysburg, right? Where more people died there in 30 minutes than in all of, I think, the yellow fever, or like something nuts, or some crazy shit like that. If you're doing it in the desert, right? You're doing, again, it used to be the ocean, so you can transfer states. So what is dry now was wet one period in history. It allows for an inversion of flux. So while you might be dry now, it's wet then, so anything in between you can conjure, you can create a pathway that folds through the space-time, right? So that when you're doing the work that was there, the type of workings can be used for a type of balance. So when you go to the desert, back in the day, they used to banish all evil things to the desert. Go to the desert, be sent to the desert, right? And to go to the wander in the wastes and die, right? So to never be seen again. So you can send things to the desert, or you can call things out of the desert, or you can use the desert as a meeting place, because if nobody's going to follow you into the desert if you're going to go do something nefarious, right? That would be against your city or your tribe or your city-state's edicts. Like, you're not allowed to go do demon magic, and you're going to go do demon magic anyway. You're going to go to the desert to do it, so you're going to bring them down into the desert safely away from all the people around you that could get fucked up by what you're doing. Trees are a good one. I like trees. Trees are a living gate. So when you connect to a tree, you hug it, you sit with it, you give it water, you give it food, you made friends with it. there are other types of trees that exist in other types of worlds. There have to be, right? So it's not just about this Earth's tree. It's about, okay, so you've got this tree right in front of you. Then it connects to all oak trees on the planet that are like that oak tree, right? And then any oak tree that exists in creation or has ever existed in creation, you can connect to that as well. So that way one tree becomes the many tree, right? It becomes the world tree. You can use fire, you can use air, you can use shadows. Shadows, again, being a temporary thing. So if you set up your ritual grid and you've got, it's a very specific condition of how the sun moves, you've got a gate that only lasts from when this period here reaches this period here, and it moves outside of your ritual space, so it no longer opens. So when you're working with those, you can bring shadow creatures through, or you can project things into the shadows. If you're doing nightmare work and having to help somebody work past the path of nightmares, that's a really good way to do it, because it limits the time in which you have to be exposed to those things. Which then rolls right along into the demon gates. So demons are energy, right? They are guides. Daemons are the intangible guides that we are connected to. Demonic stuff is raw energies that are overtly caustic and emotional. So it's not that you want to work with them specifically, it's that you want to calm them down. And so by calming them down, you can figure out a way to make something mad or to get something into an uncontrollable state. And in that moment, in that uncontrollable state, you bring it to calm, you bring it to peace, you bring it to a point where it's not going to get corrupted anymore. And then again, this goes into the war gates. Like if you're working in a place where there's a battlefield, or if you're working in a place where there's conflict and things like that, if you're in gang territory and you have to settle disputes, then it acts as a means by which you can settle some of those energies, because you are tapping specifically into the conflict between two groups. So you splice it down the middle and you separate the conflict tethers, and you use that to bring out healing. You use those to bring out a sort of resolution. So I did this with a bullet from the Civil War and an arrowhead from the Civil War on a spell that I was testing with a buddy of mine. I was here in California, he was over in West Virginia, and he pushed energy into the spell, I pulled energy out of the spell, and within the 3 months we had a cavalry group apologizing to tribal leaders in South Dakota when the pipeline crisis was happening. It was like right away this shit was happening. Like this was within days that this shit was going on. Like it was nuts. That was pretty cool. The single desire that a soul can embody for when you're looking at hope as a gateway, right? You have to get through despair, you have to get through darkness, you have to get through the pain of not wanting to be alive, and you have to find the gate of hope. Hope is covered up by all of the things that you don't want to face down, but you're going to go through it anyway. It's like your own personal fires of hell. It's your own personal journey. You're looking to go into hope, but you don't have hope. Well, how do you find it? Well, you have to go through despair. You have to go through darkness. You have to go through wanting death. You have to go through all of the horrible things in life, because otherwise, how are you going to find real hope, right? What's going to keep you going when there's nothing else to keep you going? It's that hope. It's that something that exists greater than yourself. And so by tapping into that, you can open that gate, and then you can be a source of hope for others. So too is the gate of grace. Giving grace, having grace, serving grace to others is understanding that in that period of darkness, in that period of grieving, in that period of chaos, in that period of pain, they are able to come to some place of, I give you grace. I give you the space that you need in order to settle your pain, so that you can find the spirit of hope, or you can open the gate of hope on purpose. The same kind of thing can be done with the gate of ecstasy. I'm not talking about like what the drug brings on. I'm talking about divine ecstasy. You are so enraptured by the spirit and the energy of what it is you're connecting to, that what you do and why you do it means so much to you and to the energy and to everything. It's like a rapturous state of it's bliss, right? On the other side of that, there's the gate of fear. going through someone's fear, causing fear, putting them in situations that bring out their fear. How can you make that fear a positive? How do you take what they're afraid of and turn it into a positive effect so that they can find their hope, they can find their peace, they can find that next level of thinking that exists inside the gate of their fear, or what spirits are made by that spirit of fear. The gate of desire is similar to the gate of ecstasy, where it's something that they want to do. It's creating an environment where they have what they want, but bringing out even more of what they're trying to do with it. It's not just about having what you want, it's about using it to create a better resonance between what is now and what could possibly be based around that desire. So that way it's something that serves the long term, it serves a bigger picture, it serves a more full and robust capacity, right? And so the gates of divinity. Right? What is divinity? Divinity is the thing that is not yourself, that is connected so vast across creation that it's a shared experience by others, right? They can replicate the gnosis. They can replicate the knowing of what it is. They know what it is, and you know what it is, and for those that have the ears to hear it, they understand what that is. And so they can see the life of all things. They can see the threads that connect everything. They have that connection to the all, and they exist as part of the singularity, and they are part of that singularity. As a result, they are collective. It is the collective all. It is everything that works in the collective to serve the collective, but it allows for the singular expression of the individual, whereby they don't lose themselves when they allow the collective to come through them, right? There's the many that is one, and then there's the one that becomes many, right? So in this case, it's you becoming the many, you becoming the voice of the many. Now we have the gates of hell. So those, like I said, with the Qliphoth, it's every sphere where the divinity did not separate itself out from and became totalitarian and raw, right? Like, it's the negative states of emotional being, and you can elicit these kinds of things by setting up very specific markers, like the Gehenna is the dry and crumbling earth, or the perdition, or the you can set the ground up in a certain way. You conjure the earth to be a certain thing, and then you bring the demons onto it. So it's mostly you're creating a deprivation tank where they are existing, and the rest of the world doesn't get fucked up by interacting with them. The gates of heaven are the same kind of thing. You create a space that is so pure that is not outside of or not interacting with the impure world, right? It is the divine, it is the connection to the higher places, and it's not going to be something that is corruptible, right? It isn't like our world here, and it's not like the raw emotional gates of hell. It is, what is the heaven for that spirit? What is the perfect place where that thing can be itself most completely without anything telling it it sucks, without anything telling it it's bad, without anything telling it no, it can't be what it is. It's encouraged to be what it is. It's given the license to be what it is as fully as possible. That is the gate of heaven. And so you have the different types of earth, right? The different minerals, the different animals, the different bones. When you're creating these kinds of places, you have those kinds of circles, those resonances, like stone circles, right? If you're using the Preseli blue stones, you can get them to work with in tandem with Stonehenge, right? So you can take a smaller Preseli blue stone that you can carry around with you, and you can channel the magic of Stonehenge and its celestial alignments, and you don't have to go to Ireland. You don't have to go and deal with it, right? The same way that you can do that with crystals. You can channel the crystal caves of Mexico, and you just have, the incubators of the Fey spirits, right? So with these, you can also do gates in smaller forms of fire. So you don't have to create bonfires out of sacred woods, or worry about you can make it in a lamp, so that the lamp functions as a gateway, so that way when the spirit comes forth and the flame is put to the material inside that lamp, it's the union between the wick and the fire and the heat and the spirit and the behavior of that fire where you're interacting with it. But it's coming through the oil, it's coming through the lamp wick, it's coming through those energies, so that they're functioning in a way that you're getting that interaction with the spirit of the fire that you want, and then the spirit that's on the other side of that fire, that's connected to the thought of why that fire exists. So you're using fire as the intermediary, and that's the easiest, most controllable way to connect to the spirit on the other side. Because you've got, while it's here and it's burning and it's alive, right? You have that connection to those things on the other side, so therefore you can use it as a gate or an intermediary between this plane and the other one. So you can speak your prayer to it, you can speak your petition to it, you can set other stuff on fire so that it sends like the spirit money to it. Like you can do ancestor money if you're doing any Taoist work. You know, you feed them the hell notes that they're called. But going through and working with the different types of gates allows you to go and do different types of spirit work, do different types of ritual work, because then you take on the understanding that what you're doing and why you're doing it is for a greater purpose. There are higher energies, there are lower energies, there are balanced energies that you're working with in your ritual space or in your ritual connections. And it's through those, and it's through that intermediary that you have set the space. So when you're using the opening spells of Gatekeeper, open the way, the road whose course does not turn back, open the gate so that I may enter here, you're using a physical intermediary and creating that space through that intermediary, so that way you are traveling through it. You are entering into that space. You are having that connection to it, so that way you are served by those things. And you're able to establish that connection, so that you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm just making a conjuration and there's nothing that's happening. No, it's very specific. You have set the gate because of the array, because of the anchors that exist, because of the ingredients that you selected, because of the understanding that you have of the entire thing, and you are creating the singularity compression, so that way when you're done, everything works. That's how that works. That's how that's supposed to go. So, that's my rant on gates for today. I hope it helps. And if you have any questions in relation to this stuff, feel free. Shoot me a message. I look forward to hearing about it. Be safe, y'all.